It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the illegal waste dumped in the middle of a community. We'll take a look at how this neighbourhood in Wigan had 25,000 tonnes of rubbish deliberately left on their doorstep. With residents complaining, authorities haven't acted quickly enough.
That smell of maggots, rotting food and maggots. My house smells like that. We just can't move for flies, and then we noticed an increase in rats.
This uncovered as a cross-party group of peers say the Environment Agency and the police are critically under-prioritising the crime, brazenly carried out by organised criminal gangs across the UK, part of a trade so lucrative it's been described as the new narcotics. Also tonight, the latest on Hurricane Melissa. We'll hear from British tourists caught up in the eye of the storm as Jamaica feels the full force of their worst storm in over 3 decades. The Foreign Secretary has announced support for British nationals in the region. Plus, an Afghan national arrested after a man is killed and 2 others are injured in a triple stabbing in Uxbridge in West London. I'll speak to the university academic who is going to receive substantial damages after a court ruled today that the portrayal of him in a Steve Coogan film was defamatory. And tributes tonight to the Fawlty Towers actress Prunella Scales, who has died at the age of 93. Well, let's cover much more on the UK Tonight. Described as an epidemic of waste crime across the country. The Environment Agency and the police have been accused of failing to take action to tackle fly tipping by organised criminal gangs, with a cross-party group of peers calling on the government to set up an independent review of the crime. It's an issue blighting the UK countryside, and Sky News has seen firsthand the impact illegal dumping is having on residents in Wigan, where 25,000 tonnes of waste was deliberately left over a 3-month period. Residents there say their homes have been left overrun by maggots and flies, blaming local authorities for not acting quickly enough. Our correspondent Rachel Venables has this special report.
Between rows of terraced houses, a country park and a primary school in Wigan sits this burnt mass of shredded, stinking waste. 25,000 tonnes of illegally dumped rubbish. But this is just one of thousands of locations turned to dump sites across the country in recent years, with the authorities accused of failing to tackle an epidemic in serious waste crime. Actually being stood here in this site is quite overwhelming. You can see the sheer scale of this rubbish which has been dumped. It almost rises to 4, maybe 5 stories high in places. And the smell is indescribable. It's just rotten. It almost gets you in the chest. But for now, there's no sign of this being cleared up. And so local people say the rubbish just sits here and festers.
That smell of maggots, rotting food and maggots. My house smells like that. We just can't move for flies, and then we noticed an increase in rats.
Louise, not her real name, is too scared about who might be behind this organised criminal act to appear on camera.
We just started getting in deliveries of 18-wheeler lorries coming down the street, and we'd get about 20 or 30 a day delivering loads of rubbish. And it's not just a set category of rubbish, it's nappies, black bin rubbish, chemicals, plastic.
She can't believe, months on, it's still here.
I think it's awful to let people live with that toxic rubbish right next to our house after asking for help and nothing's materialised.
Locals first started reporting refuse lorries driving down the road last winter. Satellite photos from October, January, March and June showed just how quickly the site filled up. And then on the 1st of July, a blaze started naturally in the rubbish, which burnt for 9 days and was declared a major incident. Only then, on the 18th of July, did Wigan Council get a court order to close the site.
Some residents ended up with chest infections and was on steroids and inhalers. from the smoke, and I do believe there's a couple of residents actually ended up in hospital as well.
Sky News has been investigating the national surge in waste crime. So lucrative it's been dubbed the new narcotics. If treated properly, this 25,000 tonnes of waste could have been worth as much as £2.5 million in landfill tax. Often gangs will undercut legitimate competition, dump the rubbish and pocket the huge profits. But finding out how and why this happened here and who's responsible is difficult. The landowner hasn't responded to us, and the many companies who appear to have transported the waste are also refusing to answer our questions or our calls. It's Rachel Venables here. I'm calling from... He hung up. It's Bolton House Road, Bickershaw in Wigan.
Welcome to the EE voicemail. I'm sorry, but the person you called...
So back in January, residents tell us that they had sometimes 20 wagons a day driving down their road. And we've seen images of several of these vehicles. They're either refuse or haulage companies. And some of their websites talk about being eco-friendly, a focus on recycling. But so far, through our attempts to speak to them on email or with a call, none of them have been able to give us a good explanation as to what they were doing there. Louise and her neighbours are victims of organised crime, but they feel like they've been abandoned by the authorities, and they're not alone.
This machine is a loading shovel.
So it makes sense that you'd use something like this if you were moving a huge amount of waste around?
Correct.
Unaware of what was happening in Wigan, Neil leased several diggers there over the winter, but the payments stopped coming, and then they got a warning call from the Environment Agency, so he and his daughter went to take their vehicles back. But they claim a group of men on the land assaulted and threatened them.
We want you to give us £100,000 and we'll allow you to take your diggers back, or we can cut your throat.
But the police told them to leave, or they would be arrested.
I'm reporting to you now that I've been assaulted by that gentleman down there.
And he's saying you broke his gate.
These machines are stolen.
Legally,
right?
They are not.
Yes, they are.
No, they aren't. We're going to go. If we come back and get another call out and you have not left, as I've advised you to do, one of you is probably going to get locked up.
They never got their machines back, and days later, they'd been smashed up and destroyed.
Well, angry, really. My main concern, I just wanted us to get us machines back. But the fact that a man can spit in a woman's face and get away with it, and the police are not interested, well, it is maddening.
If you had to say in a couple of sentences how difficult the last couple of months have been, how bad's it been?
Absolutely soul-destroying. It's caused us so much grief, damage to business. Just absolutely brought us to his knees.
Financially, what's been the damage?
Probably upwards of 250, 300,000.
And when it comes to the way the authorities deal with waste crime, illegal dump sites, what have you learnt?
They're not bothered.
A Greater Manchester Police spokesperson said, "We can confirm there's an ongoing complaint, and as part of this complaint, our Professional Standards Directorate are assessing all elements of the investigation, including all crimes and reviewing body-worn footage. This process will take time to go through. However, the complainant will be kept up to date with the process." What's gone wrong here between the council, the police and the Environment Agency?
Bluntly, there's been too much passing the buck.
The local MP thinks there's been a multi-agency failure.
I was told there's a criminal investigation and therefore no action can be taken to prevent people dumping more on the site or intervening. We can't intervene because there's a criminal investigation. That just doesn't seem right to me.
Legally, it's the landowner's responsibility to clear up this waste, but the bill to the council, if they refuse, could be between £4 and £5 million.
And cynically, this is a working class area. The value of this land is less than the cost that it will be to remove the waste behind me. So it's easy to just let it happen. It is in the end the Environment Agency's job to protect our environment. So if the Environment Agency don't feel they have responsibility for cleaning up things like this that are just too big for local councils, then we have to change what the Environment Agency is responsible for as politicians.
The Environment Agency's Director of Operations said their staff are visiting regularly adding, in addition to doing everything with the powers available to us to reduce the impact the site is having, we're continuing to progress our criminal investigation as a priority. This includes actively pursuing many lines of inquiry, interviewing under caution, and using the enforcement tools available to us. This is a community that feels wronged and abandoned, wronged by the criminals so brazenly making money from this disaster, and abandoned by the authorities, whom they'd hoped would have had the will and power to protect them.
Well, it's jaw-dropping, but just a snapshot of what is happening across the UK. Rachel is here with the studio now alongside Baroness Sheehan, the chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee, who published their report into waste crime today. Welcome to you both. Baroness, I'll talk to you first about the scale of this problem. As I said, you know, the images we had there from Wigan are incredible, but this is happening right across the UK. Your report is called this endemic, this trade becoming bigger and more sophisticated. Talk to us about the scale of what's happening.
Oh, goodness. The committee was first alerted to this issue through reports that we were hearing about a site in Kent called Hodes Wood, where 20 to 30 lorries a day had dumped 30,000 tonnes of waste. It had gone on for 4 or 5 years. Residents had made repeated calls to the Environment Agency, to the police, to the local authority, but they just seemed to be passing the buck around amongst themselves, saying it's somebody else's responsibility. So, you know, what happened was that this triple SI, this site of scientific, special scientific interest, it's a pristine bluebell woodland, was absolutely trashed over years and nobody did anything about it. So we thought this would be something worth our looking further into, and what we found was that this was the tip of the iceberg, and that 38 million tonnes of waste every year are illegally dumped, which is quite shocking. I mean, just to put it into context, that's 35 Wembley stadiums worth every year. And so that was really very shocking. And what we found was that because nobody was taking responsibility, the Environment Agency were passing it to the police, who were passing it to the local authority, who were then passing it back, criminals could act with impunity. Nobody was holding them to account. Serious organised waste groups have moved in, and you know, we're talking drugs, we're talking modern-day slavery, money laundering, and these serious organised crime groups were able to have very high profits, and this was seen as a low-risk, high-reward enterprise for them.
Yeah, Rachel, you've been looking into this for some time now for Sky News, and, you know, it is an illegal industry. It's worth millions. You went into some of the numbers in your report there. It's worth millions to the perpetrators. It's seen as low-risk, high reward. What sort of numbers are we talking about here?
Well, if we just look at the impact on ourselves, the country, it's thought that waste crime in its entirety costs us around £1 billion every single year, which is a staggering amount of money. And that's through a mixture of lost income to HMRC, because obviously we look at this waste in Wigan, that should have probably been taken to a landfill site and tax should have been paid per tonnage. And that didn't happen, so that's a huge cost there. There's also the cost for law enforcement. There's also the cost to legitimate companies, again, who should have been paid to recycle, to maintain, to manage this waste properly, who weren't paid. And there's also a phenomenal cost, largely to local authorities, but also to businesses and landowners for cleaning this up. And in my previous reports, I've heard, for example, from farmers who are often the victims of this sort of crime, because people will come in the middle of the night, they'll tip out a lorry, a van, a car, boots load worth of waste. They'll maybe have been paid to clear that up. And the farmer wakes up in the morning, sees that on their land and realises they're going to get a bill and a potential risk of prosecution from the Environment Agency if they themselves don't clear it up. And I know that's something that you heard, Baroness Sheehan, in your testimony, was often the people who are getting prosecuted are almost the innocent victims, the landowners who just happen to be the ones where these criminals take advantage of.
Yeah, Baroness Sheehan, your report found that this issue is critically under-prioritised, and given the numbers that you've both talked about there and the impact we've seen on communities. You mentioned Kent there, but, you know, Rachel's been to Wigan to see what's happening there. Why is it under-prioritised?
Do you know, this was something that we found very difficult to get to the bottom of. The Environment Agency seemed to think that unless it was a permitted operation, that it was outside their remit, and I think that's one of the reasons why why they didn't take any notice of it. The police just didn't seem to be interested, and we were really unimpressed with the police's response. We asked the National Crime Agency, the National Police Chiefs Council, the National College of Policing to come and give evidence to our committee. They wouldn't, and when we pressed them, we were told that they didn't have anyone with sufficient knowledge of the issue to be able to come to speak to the committee, which really speaks volumes in itself. There just didn't seem to be an appetite.
Nobody's taking it on.
Nobody seemed to care, and that was so frustrating for the residents.
Yeah. I mean, Rachel, the residents you spoke to in Wigan, you know, many of them not wanting to speak on camera because of the links to organised crime, you know, fearing for their safety if they speak out publicly. But the residents had been making phone calls, had been calling the police for months. And as you said, in Kent, in Ashford, it had been going on for years, complaints being made. But they weren't being listened to. Rachel, how frustrating was that for them? It takes you to come down with a camera crew and investigate for, you know, this to get attention.
I think that's exactly it. I think so many people just couldn't understand. It almost like, I think it must feel like being trapped in a nightmare where you're expecting to wake up and somebody to come and rescue you and help. And just for months, you know, they were taking those pictures of lorries driving down their road. They were calling the police, they were calling the council, they were calling the Environment Agency. And as you just described, they would get bounced between different authorities. We also heard from the local MP, Josh Simmons, who's hugely frustrated. He got involved around, I think, January time, and he was allegedly told by the Environment Agency that we can't prevent the dumping while it was still happening, while this site was getting bigger, because there's a criminal investigation ongoing. I mean, that sounds staggering. Whether or not that's true in terms of why they didn't act, we don't know, but I think there is just so many questions there. We have had a statement from Wigan Council as well, who are obviously part of this, and they say really for them their top priority is to ensure the residents feel heard and safe. They say while the Environment Agency carries out their investigation with our full cooperation. And Paul Barton, the Director for Environment, went on to say, we want the site to be cleared as a matter of urgency and are continuing to work with the Environment Agency to survey and sample the waste so the polluters and the landowners, who they point out are the responsible parties, can progress this as soon as possible. But we talk about as soon as possible. This started the best part of a year ago and the waste is still there.
Yeah. Baroness, a final word about your recommendations from this report. You want this to be sort of a line in the sand on this issue that has been going on for years. What are the recommendations? What do you want to see come of this? Part of it is an independent review, but then, you know, what action, what teeth do you want?
I think what the main call from the committee is for a root and branch review of the practices of the Environment Agency with regards to waste crime. And we want that review to be independent of DEFRA, independent of the Environment Agency and independent of HMRC. And we want it to include as a case study what went so wrong at Hodes Wood, why the Environment Agency, as soon as they knew there was illegal dumping going on, why did they not put a restriction notice up to stop vehicles going in and put concrete blocks up? They did eventually after 5 years. Almost 5 years. It's quite not good enough, really. And secondly, we'd like a waste hotline set up, a dedicated line that members of the public can use, one number that they can ring to report a crime that they're seeing in action. And we hope that that will then be triaged and taken up, and the member of the public can have complete confidence that action will be taken. We think that's very important. I think really important also is, and I think this is a really important point to make actually, is that there are regulatory reforms in train, but they have been delayed. One in particular is called the Carriers, Brokers and Dealers Reform. That's a system where people can register to transport waste. At the moment, you can register a dead dog or a goldfish. There are no checks whatsoever. You can become a legitimate waste carrier if you've just registered. That system needs desperate reform, and we don't know why it's been delayed so long.
Given the scale of what we're seeing up and down the UK with this illegal industry, yeah, it's incredible that hasn't gone through. Baroness Sheehan, Chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee, thank you so much for coming in, and Rachel Venables as well with our special report this evening on illegal waste crime. Thank you. Well, just a reminder that we want to hear your stories. If you're affected by something like this in your community, you can scan the QR code on your screen to get in touch and tell us about any waste crime that's happening in your area of the country. Rachel Venables is continuing to investigate this story, so we'd really like to hear from you if this affects your community. Still to come on the UK tonight, we're going to speak to a British tourist stuck in Jamaica. Hurricane Melissa battering the island right now with winds of up to 185 miles per hour. Also coming up, Sky News questions Lord Mandelson over his relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein for the first time since he was sacked as a US ambassador. And tributes tonight to Fawlty Towers actress Prunella Scales after her death at the age of 93.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Let's bring you an update now on Hurricane Melissa. It has been dubbed the storm of the century. It has made landfall in Jamaica, bringing with it winds of up to 185 miles per hour. Authorities warning of potentially catastrophic damage on the island. Well, thousands in the path of the storm have been urged to evacuate, and as many as 1.5 million people expected to be directly affected. Live pictures we're getting from Kingston Harbour, some pretty choppy waters there at the moment. We can take a look at the scene in the capital of Kingston. Various cameras there showing the conditions on the roads, understandably They are empty. At least a third of the country believed to be without power right now. The Foreign Office has confirmed that it is working to support British nationals who are caught up in all of this in Jamaica. This is the official weather map tracking the eye of the storm. As you can see, Jamaica not out of it yet. We are hoping to speak to a British tourist in Jamaica. Understandably, connections not good. A lot of power outages, as I said, on the island. We'll bring you that when we can. Now, today Sky News has questioned Lord Mandelson for the first time since he was sacked as US ambassador following increased scrutiny over his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Lord Mandelson has kept a low profile since leaving the post, only days before Donald Trump's state visit to the UK last month.
Lord Mandelson, sir, did you tell Keir Starmer everything about the nature of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Was there full disclosure about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein before you were appointed ambassador? Did you tell Keir Starmer everything? Did you leave anything out? So can you clear up for us, how many times did you visit Jeffrey Epstein? How many times did you visit him, sir? Sir, who are the friends you referred to in your birthday message to Epstein in his birthday book? So are you going to release all the correspondence between you and Jeffrey Epstein? Lord Mandelson, these are important matters, sir. Are you going to release the correspondence? Was Keir Starmer aware?
Well, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who is in Westminster for us tonight. Not many answers, but I guess that goes to show that even though he's kept a low profile, you know, kept his head below the parapet, as it were, those questions about Jeffrey Epstein, his relationship with him, are not going away, John.
Certainly not going away. That was the dogged persistence there was our Sky News colleague, Rob Catterall, caught up with him at a railway station in Wiltshire, near where Lord Mandelson appears to be living now. He's back in the UK. Yes, lots of questions. Not a word, not even a good evening from Lord Mandelson. Looked very furtive, looked shifty, really. Clearly furious that he'd been questioned like that. There may come a point, of course, when he has to answer questions in Parliament. It's entirely possible that there may well be some sort of a select committee inquiry into what happened, or some other sort of parliamentary inquiry where he'll have to answer questions. But for now, he's... Well, I mean, it's not often that Peter Mandelson has nothing to say, but on this occasion he had nothing to say. Yes, the questions are, of course, relate to his support for Jeffrey Epstein at a time when he was already facing jail over sex offences. He sent him a message of support. Other questions is who else was involved? What did the Prime Minister know? I mean, the Prime Minister, of course, we now know, Sky News has revealed this, was warned, it was flagged, there were warnings flagged by the security services about the risk of appointing Lord Mandelson. But according to ministers, I recall an interview by Peter Kyle on the Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips, where it was the government took the decision it was worth the risk, to use Mr Kyle's words, of appointing Lord Mandelson. Well, of course, that turned out to be a very serious error. Let's not forget Lord Mandelson, who has a love of the high life, friends with oligarchs, and of course now his friendship with Epstein has brought him down. He had to resign from the cabinet twice. First of all, back in 1998, that was over failing to disclose a loan from Geoffrey Robinson, the fellow Labour MP, to his building society when he got a mortgage. That was when he had to quit the first time round. Secondly, he had to quit over a passport application that wasn't conducted in the proper way. That was when he was Northern Ireland Secretary. So he has had a checkered career. He said in 2001, after his second resignation, "I'm a fighter, not a quitter." Well, he then went on to quit and became a Brussels commissioner. Then he came back during Gordon Brown's period. So he has held some of the great high offices of state. And also, of course, the plum job of ambassador, but it was in such a short time he held that job. And of course, the UK still has no ambassador in Washington. It's thought it'll be a career diplomat next time to avoid the prospect of any scandal. And it's pretty rare for a political appointee, but after what's happened with Lord Mandelson, one would assume the Prime Minister will go for a very safe choice, a career diplomat this time.
OK, John, thank you. John Craig with the latest there from Westminster. As has come here on the UK Tonight, police arrest an Afghan national. This after a triple stabbing in West London leaves one person dead and another with life-changing injuries. We'll have the latest for you. And I'll be speaking to the university academic who today has been awarded substantial damages over a portrayal of him in a Steve Coogan film. The Home Office has confirmed a man has been arrested over a fatal stabbing in West London. He's an Afghan national who entered the country in a lorry in 2020 before being granted asylum 2 years later. One man died and another was seriously injured after the triple stabbing in Uxbridge yesterday in what police have described as a senseless act of violence. Alice Porter has more details.
Armed with a bloody knife, the suspect chased by police, tasered, then falling to the floor.
It's a madness. Someone's been stabbed over here, someone's been stabbed here.
Paramedics were called to West London and tried to save the life of a 49-year-old man, but he died at the scene. A 45-year-old man was taken to hospital with life-changing injuries. A 14-year-old was also stabbed, but survived. One neighbour walked past moments after the attack.
There was a man on the floor, a police officer on top of him, and I could just hear screaming, see sirens. I walked like about 2 seconds up, and there was a man on the floor being resuscitated. And then I just continued walking. I was trying to find out what was going on because it was all just happening so quick. And I just feel very relieved as well because obviously I was still walking in line. You know, I would have been the next person.
Residents have told me they're shocked that this triple stabbing could take place on a quiet suburban street. A 22-year-old Afghan national has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. It's understood he entered the UK in a lorry in 2020 and was granted asylum and leave to remain 2 years later. But for this community who saw their streets become a crime scene, their thoughts are with the victims' families.
Breaks my heart, really breaks my heart. It's really sad. All I can do is pray for them, isn't it?
Around 100 locals have walked in memory of the man who died. These stabbings are not being treated as terrorism, but questions remain as to why they happened in this community. Alice Porter, Sky News.
A university academic is to receive substantial damages after a court ruled that the portrayal of him in a Steve Coogan film did have a defamatory meaning. Richard Taylor sued the comedian and production companies involved in the film The Lost King, the production companies Baby Cow and Pathé Productions. The academic saying that he launched high court action after claiming the film, which was about the discovery of Richard III's remains in Leicester, had made him appear, amongst other things, misogynistic. Well, Richard joins us now to talk through this story. Richard, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on the UK tonight. What was your initial reaction when you first saw the film and your portrayal in it? Because you were involved at the time with Leicester University and you were helping in the discovery of these remains.
Yeah, so I played an important role in sourcing funding for the dig, in mobilising the university's expertise. So I first, I wasn't consulted or even knew I was in the film. So the first I hear is I get a phone call while I'm on holiday. Eventually, after press previews, I persuade the producers to let me see a preview of the film, and I explain why I think they've got some of the details wrong in it. And I'm absolutely shell-shocked by the portrayal that I see in front of me. I'm portrayed by someone on screen who looks like me, who sounds like me, who dresses like me, but behaves in a way that falls so far short of the standards I set for myself and what others might reasonably expect of me. So, you know, it was really shell-shocking, really quite a challenge to sit there and watch one portrayed in this untrue, unreasonable way.
Yeah, the judge last year, Judge Lewis, ruled that you'd been shown to be smug, unduly dismissive and patronising, which led him to the conclusion that it had a defamatory meaning. What's been the effect of this on you? Because obviously it's one thing to sit there and see an unfair, inaccurate portrayal of yourself, but it's quite another thing to have that out in the public domain, not just friends and families, but strangers seeing you represented like that on screen.
Yeah, and I mean, the other meaning was that I'd knowingly misled the public, and my integrity is really important to me.
The judge saying that it seemed that you'd knowingly misrepresented facts about the find to the media and the public. That's how it was portrayed in the film, and that too was found to be inaccurate.
Quite, and so I started receiving emails at work accusing, telling me to rot in hell. I started people telling me I was a disgrace. Correspondence receiving in the office. So something that was a collaborative effort that showcased the best of British universities, in my view, was turned into this farce of I was the villain and portrayed in a way that was completely inconsistent with the reality and the truth. And none of the facts were ever checked. No one ever spoke to me about the film. The producers just went ahead, filmed it, produced it, stuck it out there, and left me to deal with all the flack and all the fallout from it. And grossly unfair. And I feel vindicated from the result that we've achieved.
Yeah, I mean, it's been described as David and Goliath in terms of you've taken on 2 production companies, you've taken on, a huge star in terms of Steve Coogan. He's got a really high profile. You've settled your claim for substantial damages, and an on-screen clarification is now going to be added to the start of the film. They're not cutting anything out or editing anything. Is the clarification enough for you, or would you like to have seen them re-edit the film?
I'd like them to see them re-edit the film, but one's got to be realistic about what one can achieve. I mean, the insertion of the card will say that the person on screen is a fictitious portrayal, and the real Richard Taylor didn't behave like that and behaved with integrity throughout the project. So the film's going to look pretty silly, so I've got to where I can get to, I think, with that. As you say, there's significant 7-figure costs that the other side are going to have to pay. There's damages, and they're going to have to make an undertaking not to repeat the defamatory accusations that they made through the film. Pathé, Baby Cow, and Steve Coogan.
Have you had an apology from either production company or indeed Steve Coogan himself?
No. No, indeed, and I mean, Steve Coogan came out yesterday saying he was happy with the film. Well, I mean, it's a pretty strange definition of happy when you've had to settle a defamation claim for 7 figures in costs. I mean, Steve is never anything other than certain in himself and of his own position. But I think he's wrong on this. I think he's got it wrong. Basic facts were not checked. Stuff that was already in the public domain that's been known of for years and years and years. YouTube videos of Philippa Langley, who originated the quest, speaking at press conferences, and then the film showing her excluded from the press conferences. So no basic fact-checking going on, leading to a film that, could have been so much more. It could have told the story of this fantastic discovery. Instead, it's a defamatory portrayal that's landed the producers in hot water with all of these really significant costs.
Well, look, as your barrister said, it's hoped that this is a warning to those making content that they say is about real-life events. He said the law is very clear and there are defined routes to compensation for individuals who find themselves misrepresented. Well, Rich, thank you so much for coming on. And, you played an integral part in that dig, uncovering the remains of Richard III. I remember covering the story at the time here on Sky News. It was an incredible achievement, and I hope that, it doesn't overshadow your part in it too much for you. Thank you so much for coming on to Sky News. Really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Well, in a joint statement following the hearing today, Steve Coogan and the production companies involved in the making of the film, Pathé Productions and Baby Cow, said this: as a distributor and producer recognised for bringing complex, real-life stories to audiences, we are deeply aware of the responsibility that comes with such portrayals and approach each project with care, integrity and a commitment to authenticity. We remain incredibly proud of this film and are pleased this matter has now been settled. As part of the agreement, no material editorial changes will be made to the film beyond an on-screen clarification at the beginning of the film. This has come on the UK tonight. Tributes to the Fawlty Towers actress Prunella Scales, who has died at the age of 93. We'll take a look back at her life. And in the sport, Martin O'Neill has returned to take interim charge at Celtic after Brendan Rodgers' shock resignation late last night.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
A lifeline for millions of people living on both sides of one of the most volatile international borders.
It's dams like these that have become inflection points between the two nuclear-armed neighbours, which could potentially lead to water wars in the future. A terror attack has shattered the peace and tranquility of Kashmir. At least 26 people have been killed and as many injured when militants fired upon them. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
The old and young, all weary after being trapped for days as the worst floods have hit Kerala in a century.
3 days we are on a rooftop. They have no food, nothing.
The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. There have been reported deaths and many injuries, several critical.
Many families will grapple with the unimaginable loss of one of the worst disasters in India's aviation history.
The spiraling violence between two nuclear-armed neighbours that harbour decades of hostility just seems to be getting worse by the day.
Garbage dumps like this not only threaten the lives of millions of people, but also pose a deadly consequence on the environment and climate.
It is a source of death, decay, disease and pollution for hundreds of thousands of people living in its shadows.
There is so much disease because of this garbage. Sometimes it's so difficult to just breathe.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Over the next 45 days, an estimated 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. It's a real kaleidoscope of people from all walks of life.
Welcome back. The Home Office has confirmed that hundreds of migrants will be moved to military sites as the government tries to stop the use of asylum hotels. 2 sites, one in Inverness and one in East Sussex, could be used to temporarily house around 900 men. Our political correspondent Mari Aurora has this report.
I'm determined that we will close those hotels. We're taking the action. I can't tell you how frustrated and angry I am that we've been left with a mess as big as this by the last government.
On Tuesday, the government faced another asylum setback. A damning new report showed the expected cost of housing asylum seekers tripling. In response, the PM doubled down on his pledge to end the use of asylum hotels. But what's the alternative? Well, maybe this. Cowborough Training Camp in East Sussex. Sky News understands the government hopes to begin moving up to 600 migrants here by the end of November.
It was the Conservative government that chose to stop processing applications from asylum seekers and then decided to put the backlog, the people, in hotels in populated areas. We can't now just throw all those people out on the street. It would cause chaos. So unfortunately, the Conservatives' policy will have to continue until we have prepared alternative sites, such as disused military bases.
However, in 2023, the National Audit Office said the use of large sites, such as barracks like these, could cost more and be higher risk than using hotels. Governments have tried to use alternative accommodation to reduce costs before. In 2023, the Conservatives housed asylum seekers on a barge called the Bibby Stockholm. It faced problems from the outset, and concerns over safety forced the government to send the asylum seekers back to hotels. It was later scrapped altogether by Labour. The second location in the government's plans is a barracks in Inverness. But the local Lib Dem MP is not happy.
If you just change the word from barracks to hotel, you get exactly the same issue. It takes 10 minutes to walk from this barracks into the centre of the town. And I think I know people in the area are going to be very uncomfortable about quite substantial blocks of young men from outside the area hanging around the shopping centre in the middle of the town.
And the MP for Sussex Weald is also against the plans. Nuz Ghani says, under the previous Conservative government, the Crowborough site was rejected outright. I will be seeking urgent answers from the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence. The government wants to urgently deliver on ending the use of asylum hotels, but reducing small boat crossings, something which has gone up instead of down since Labour came to power, is a contributing factor that is testing Labour's competency in government. Mari Aurora, Sky News, Westminster.
David is here with the sport, and it all kicked off after this show finished last night. We were just talking about the fact that it was quite a quiet night for sport.
Deathly quiet.
And then they waited until we went off air at 9 o'clock at Celtic to drop the bombshell.
I was about to go on air at 10 on Sky Sports News, and we're there going, it's a quiet night, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's famous last words, always with these sort of things.
And then Brendan Rodgers leaves Celtic and the tea is spilt. Talk me through the drama.
Yeah, OK, so Brendan Rodgers, Celtic announced in a statement, had tendered his resignation. It had been accepted. Perhaps the twist in the story at that point was Martin O'Neill was coming back in interim charge with Sean Maloney, a former Celtic player, obviously O'Neill, former Celtic manager. But actually, as you said, the tea was spilt after the most withering of statements from the Celtic majority shareholder, that's Dermot Desmond.
If you haven't read it in full, it's worth logging on to the Celtic website to read it. I've never read anything like it.
No, right. I mean, especially from someone who is in this position, at such a level of authority at the club, who barely speaks or is seen, and yet comes out to talk about Brendan Rodgers specifically as this parting shot. I mean, this is barely short of a character assassination. So, first of all, there was, a little bit of, context confusion of whether they had offered Brendan Rodgers a contract renewal or not, who had the final sign-off on transfers. But then the key one really was his words and actions have been divisive, misleading and self-serving, contributing to a toxic atmosphere around the club. What has failed recently was not due to our own structural model, but one individual's desire for self-preservation at the expense of others. But as I mentioned, it is Martin O'Neill who is suddenly in interim charge.
I had 10 minutes to make up my mind, apparently, which I did. Obviously, the events of the last 24 hours are quite stunning, and at this minute I've been called in to do the job, interim manager at this minute.
First thing for Martin O'Neill to do is the game against Falkirk tomorrow night, and then, would you believe it, Old Firm match against Rangers in the Scottish League Cup. Life is never dull in Glasgow, that is for sure. So that is as far as Celtic is concerned, but plenty of other football headlines this evening.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, Evertonians are getting restless. Their team can't score goals and they need a win. The prospect of another long struggle against relegation is already looming. And Ruud Gullit isn't happy at the way things are mapping out at Newcastle either. They're just as desperate for points. So a real crunch match this.
There was some whisperings in the press, but there was no indication whatsoever of the imminent nature of what was going to happen that night.
It happened very quickly. I think I only got told maybe a couple of days leading up to the Newcastle game that the agent was phoning me saying that the club were looking to sell you. Yeah, it came out the blue really. Something I wasn't looking to do, I wasn't looking to move. Didn't want to move for the club.
We were under pressure from the bank to get the overdraft down. We were playing Newcastle and the chairman and joint owner were there, and I wasn't there, I wasn't privy. It was news to me when it came through. Newcastle had come.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Fawlty Towers actress Prunella Scales has died at the age of 93. Our arts and entertainment reporter Bethany Manel has been taking a look back at her life and career.
Hello? Audrey, any news?
A 7-decade career across stage and screen, but one role above others etched into British culture.
Prunella Scales' portrayal of Basil Fawlty's sharp-tongued wife Sybil, a masterclass in comedy acting.
I know you have. I know.
50 years after it first hit our screens, still one of the nation's most legendary sitcoms, her comedy partnership with John Cleese being a big part of that success.
I know.
Somebody going to go and let them in?
Yeah.
I'll go then, shall I? Yes, I agree. Right, I'll go then.
Basil.
Hi there, just checking the doors.
Cleese paid tribute, calling her a really wonderful comic actress whose scene after scene was absolutely perfect. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer also praising her as part of a golden era of British comedy, giving many people a huge amount of enjoyment over many years, from performers and politicians to friends in the industry.
She was funny, independent, intelligent, interesting, interested, intrepid, a very, as I say, considerable actress. She was a mistress of her craft.
Have I many forgeries?
Training at the Old Vic and working since the 1950s, Scales worked with some of TV's comedy greats, receiving a BAFTA nomination for her portrayal of Elizabeth II in Alan Bennett's A Question of Attribution.
Yes, well, as a member in this instance, somewhat unusually for me of the public, I also find a forgery fascinating.
Famous for playing a woman in a miserable marriage, happily her own was long and fruitful, married to actor Timothy West for over 60 years. Before his death in 2024, they travelled the world's waterways, documented in Great Canal journeys.
Once she's run into 2 or 3 things, I think you'll find she'll probably like to hand the job.
Are you trying
No, I'm not
to
suggesting that at all. I'm just saying that
I'm a perfectly competent steersman.
The programme addressing her dementia with warmth and honesty. Survived by her sons Sam and Joseph, in a statement they said, although dementia forced her retirement from a remarkable acting career of nearly 70 years, she continued to live at home. She was watching Fawlty Towers the day before she died. The character that Prunella so memorably brought to life, that made her a household name, her companion to the end. Bethany Manel, Sky News.
Well, that's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Remember, you can catch up on all the highlights on our webpage, skynews.com. Coming up next, it is The World with Barbara. That's following us here on the UK Tonight at 9 o'clock. We'll see you tomorrow.